Imagine, if you will, for a moment, that by waving my magic wand thus, we're all transported back in time to 1439 in Mainz, Germany. We are present at possibly one of the most important times in the history of humankind. This man, a German blacksmith, is about to change the world in ways that he couldn't possibly have dreamed of. Things will never be the same again. Before this man did what he did, hardly anyone could read or write. There was little or no reason to learn to do so. Books were so stunningly expensive to produce that vanishingly few people could afford them. The average person may only see one or two books in their entire lives, probably just a Bible and a prayer book in their church. Books were written by hand, and it could take years to complete a single book, and they would be written by relatively educated people. The Stavilo Bible was said to have taken 4 years to complete. It has 468 pages in 2 volumes. Let's price that in 2013 money. Say 3 reasonably skilled and educated people earning maybe $25,000 a year each. $75,000 a year for 4 years. That's £300,000. How many of us could afford to buy something that costs £300,000? And if it took skill to use, would you bother to acquire that skill? It's like buying a helicopter. We all know what it is. Few of us learn to fly one. The gentleman who changed the world was Johannes Gutenberg, and he did it by introducing the letterpress printing machine. These gentlemen, working on a Gutenberg press in the 1500s, produced 3,600 pages a day. They produced 9 Bibles a day rather than one every 4 years, and they were ordinary workmen. The Stavilo Bible is a stunning work of art, and a Bible produced at the rate of 9 a day on a Gutenberg press is a much more utilitarian tome. But they both contain the same words, and the Stavilo Bible is so beautiful I doubt it has ever been read cover to cover. The men operating Gutenberg's press probably earned around £10 per hour in today's money. Let's say they're working a 9-hour day. That makes our wage costs £180 per day. If we do the math, a post-Gutenberg Bible costs £23.40. If helicopters cost £23.40 each, I suspect that many more people would learn to fly. It now made sense to learn to read. That was a 1.2 million% improvement in productivity, and that is why I believe that the Gutenberg printing press had one of the most profound effects on humanity of any invention. My father was a printer. This was exactly the sort of machine he had in his print works. Dad's machine minder, George, could keep 2 machines going simultaneously, and at peak output could produce 16,000 pages per hour. But the technology was basically the same as was introduced by Gutenberg in the middle of the 15th century. The Heidelberg company made the last letterpress machine in the mid-1970s. Without this technology, there would have been no books, no newspapers, no education of the masses, no internet, no mobile phones. What printing did was to democratize access to information. Fleet Street is where the newspaper industry used to be in the UK. All the major national papers were there, and the whole thing was controlled by incredibly powerful print unions who resisted computer technology. We had PCs and word processors in our homes and offices long before the computer touched Fleet Street. But the pressure built and built. And now journalists write their stories on computers, not typewriters. There are no longer any compositors, and the newspapers have all moved to places like Wapping, leaving their print unions and their close shop practices behind. The pressure of the new technology built to such a state that something had to give. Those who were ready rode the crest of the wave and prospered, and those who didn't vanished almost without trace. I'm going to tell you a story now, a story of the near future. It's a story about a tidal wave of change that is going to make Gutenberg's press, word processing, the internet and smartphones look like the merest ripple on the surface of a lake on a calm day. You may not believe me. You may think that all this is hype. Here are 3 little stories. In 1943, Thomas J. Watson, chairman and CEO of IBM, said, "I think there is a world market for maybe 5 computers." DEC's president, Ken Olsen, said in 1977 that there is no reason for any individual to have a computer in their home. PCs are now in the home. DEC is now defunct. It ceased to exist 11 years after Olson's pronouncement. And people laughed at Bill Gates when 30 years ago he set a goal of a PC on every desk. Who would you have gone with? Watson, Olson, or Gates? I have a new hero, British architect Alistair Parvin, who gave a TED talk, Architecture by the People for the People, in which he said something that blew my mind. He said, "The business of the 20th century was the democratization of consumption. The business of the 21st century is the democratization of production." This could take us from mass production to mass customization. Let's look at that for a moment. My great-grandmother came from a small country village, and all her life I doubt that she saw an object that was made more than 10 miles from where she lived. And she owned very few things: the clothes she stood up in, a pot and a pan, a bonnet, a few sticks of furniture. But in the early 20th century, Henry Ford invented the production line, and it had an almost as profound effect as Gutenberg's printing press. Now we were able to produce goods quickly and cheaply, but at the same time, we needed to make sure that there were people able to buy, to own these goods. The factory employed the people to make the stuff, to earn the money, to buy the stuff. The consumer society was born. In great-grandmama's day, it was only the top few percent of society that owned things. Henry Ford was on the leading edge of the wave of democratizing the ownership of things, in the same way that Gutenberg was on the leading edge of the democratization of access to knowledge and information. Until desktop publishing came along, however, with low-cost laser and inkjet printers, the production of information, publishing books, magazines and newspapers, required expensive machinery and was in the control of people with money and power. But once you could buy a laptop with internet access and an inkjet printer for just a few £100s, anyone could become a publisher. We democratized the production of information as well as its consumption. If my father hadn't retired and sold his business when he did, he would have drowned in that wave. But now we stand at the beginning of another new age, when the machine that sits in the corner of the office isn't just able to print out text neatly, it can print out or manufacture objects, things as well. With mass customization, you will not only be able to have any color, but any size, shape and features that you want. My iPhone was designed in California, manufactured in China. I bought it in the UK. I had little choice, but there is a day coming when I will be able to look at mobile phone designs online, decide exactly what features I need, press a button, and it will be built in my personal fabricator on my desk. If that seems fantastical, let me wave my time machine again and take you back to the 1990s to talk to your 20-year younger self. Tell your younger self what you can do with your smartphone in the year 2013. Tell them about watching colour TV on the phone in your pocket. Tell them about doing email and texts on the phone in your pocket. Tell them about internet access to Wikipedia on the phone in your pocket. They probably think that Star Trek communicator is pretty off-the-wall futurology, but the only way that a Star Trek communicator is better than my iPhone is that they seem to have a more reliable signal. I never saw Captain Kirk have to go outside and stand on a chair in order to talk to people on the Enterprise. My father shrank from the future. The first time I printed a page in perfect Times New Roman on my laser printer and took it round to show him, he wouldn't look. He became increasingly isolated from the modern world. I don't want to shrink from that future, the future that both I and my children have to live in, and I don't want to be drowned either. And my reason for giving this talk is that I don't want to be a lonely survivor. I want to suggest a way in which those who wish to can ride the waves that are coming and can embrace personal manufacturing, digital manufacturing, personal fabricators, and can recover the joy and the power of making. Because the power and joy of making things is something that the consumer society has taken from us. My great-grandmother not only didn't see things that were made in some place far away, she knew all the people who made all of her things. Most of them she would have made herself, or great-grandpa would have made them, mostly using tools made by the village blacksmith. All that was taken away by the consumer society. But my own parents made things. My mother knitted and did dressmaking and embroidery. My father was a woodworker and a tinkerer. He would go out to his garage or shed and make things out of junk. As a child of the 50s and 60s, I was ashamed of my dad and his amateur tinkering. Nowadays, he would be held up as a hero of hacking, recycling, and a pioneer of upcycling. He was proud of what he made, as was my mum. We all know the experience of a young child who makes something at school and runs home with it. "Look, Mum, look what I made!" If the child is lucky, Mum will praise it and stick it on the fridge or on the mantelpiece. If the child is unlucky, he or she will get, "What on earth is that then?" and be ridiculed, and will rapidly stop making stuff, becoming just another member of the consumer society. I experienced this myself. I hated writing when I was young. Having to write an essay as a schoolboy was sheer hell. With my wobbly child's handwriting and the scratchy dip in the inkwell pens we had, anything I wrote looked awful. Word processors were my saviour, especially with spelling and grammar checkers. I could develop my natural working style, which is to iterate to get things right. It may be better to get things right first time, but I don't know whether it's right until I can see it. This is true of woodwork, drawing, cookery or writing. I have to make, adjust, look, adjust more and iterate towards the final job. And you can't do that with traditional woodwork. By the time I'd planed and planed my piece of wood, hoping to get it square and smooth and flat, all I had left was shavings and a wonky sliver of timber. But the word processor allowed me to write, review, edit, correct until I was happy, and then hit print. Then the finished object looked fine. If only there was something that would allow me to make things in this way and not just pages of writing. There are, of course, professional woodworking machines, but they are prohibitively expensive. But now there are machines that allow you to make things, which allow you to iterate your design and to look as though you got it right first time. And these machines are coming down in price. Just the other day, I saw a tiny crowd-funded 3D printer for $100. This is the beginning of the personal manufacturing revolution. Desktop 3D printers, desktop computer-controlled laser cutters and milling machines, desktop 3D scanners, and all of these functions rolled into one desktop box. These things are already here, as seen in the Fab Totem personal fabricator, sold for just $999 on their Kickstarter project. Nowadays, we use the term personal computer without thinking about it. In the future, when everyone is talking about personal fabricators, remember that you heard the term here first. When Gutenberg introduced the printing press, the speed of producing books changed several thousandfold. Suddenly, learning to read made sense, and illiteracy went from being the norm to being a distinct handicap. When Bill Gates achieved his dream of a PC on every desk, with a browser to get on the internet and a word processor and an inkjet printer, suddenly it made sense to become computer literate. Not knowing about computers went from being the norm to becoming a distinct handicap. Today we describe people as digitally deprived. From Gutenberg to universal education took about 600 years. From the Wright brothers' first powered flight to package holidays took about 50 years. From computers being a rarity to being an ubiquity took less than 30 years. Now we have personal digital manufacturing, or personal fabricating. At $100 for a 3D printer and $1,000 for a machine that embraces several key technologies, including 3D scanning, how long will it take to become ubiquitous? How long before you are fabrication deprived? This is the 21st century, whose business, as Alistair Parvin said, is the democratization of production. Not knowing how to make stuff, not knowing how to use the technology, will go from the norm to being a distinct handicap. The new industrial revolution will be bigger and will happen faster than anything seen before. My job is to help us ride the wave rather than be drowned in the tsunami. I'm looking at ways to introduce the greatest number of people over the widest possible spectrum in the fastest possible time to the new technologies, and I'm working with a number of key ideas. Fab Lab, Fab Cafe, Fab Boutiques, Fab Factories, Fab Buses, it all comes together under the heading of Fab City. From their start in MIT 15 years ago, Fab Labs have spread across the world. There are about 150 of them, from places as diverse as New York, Utrecht, Barcelona, Africa, India, and even Kandahar in Afghanistan. Fab Labs were the brainchild of Professor Neil Gershenfeld. He wanted his MIT students to become proficient in using this technology. You can think of a Fab Lab as being a 21st century bloke's shed, except the equipment is much cooler and there are as many women as men. And it's a place as much, if not more so, for artists as it is for engineers. A place where almost anyone can make almost anything. In fact, the original course that Neil ran at MIT and still runs is called How to Make Almost Anything. Some of you may remember Jean-Luc Picard standing in front of the replicator on the Starship Enterprise barking, "Tea, Earl Grey, hot." The machine wasn't brewing the tea from tea leaves, it was fabricating the drink from subatomic particles. Replicating that replicator is Professor Gershenfeld's dream. The model for release 1 of Fab Lab was find some space, find oodles of money, they had around $250,000, buy all the machines. It worked, but it wasn't a model all that many people could replicate. A key principle in Fab Labs is that all designs are open source, the complete opposite of patented. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of designs freely available online. You can download the designs, and if you have access to the right machines, build your own things. You can even do this with buildings. We are fascinated by WikiHouse, open source designs for fabbed houses. You can easily self-build a 2-bed, 2-story house in the UK for £47,000, all found. You need a computer-controlled machine that cuts the shapes out of 8x4 sheets of plywood. You can buy one for the best part of £12,000, or you can build one yourself from an open source design for less than £3,000. Thus, in version 2 of Fab Lab, we will build the machines we need and spend about 1/10 as much. And we're currently working with the inventor of the WikiHouse, Alistair Parvin, he of the democratization of production quote, to develop WikiHouse designs so that we can build the Fab Lab building too. A fabbed Fab Lab in a fabbed building using fabbed equipment. It's a sort of self-replicating Fab Lab. I think of Fab Labs as the local university of the new revolution. Places where people can get educated, do research, fiddle, tinker and see what emerges. There is also Fab Academy, the uber university of all the Fab Labs. But I'm always looking for ways that are more accessible, easier ways into the personal fabrication world. So I was delighted to discover the Fab Cafe. The Fab Cafe is a place where you can drop in, attend a simple class on how to design and make something and produce it on a machine right there in the cafe. A 21st century equivalent of the Internet Cafe. Tokyo Fab Cafe's slogan is, "What do you want to fab today?" I have a dream of a personal fabricator in every Costa Coffee. Then there's Fab Boutique, a place where you can buy stuff, either things that local people have designed and made. Rich at Fab Boutique is currently selling Christmas tree decorations as well as 3D printers. All the machines that do the making. A Fab Bureau is a place that has larger, more accurate, more powerful machines than you may have at home. You can design some jewellery, say, on your laptop and print it in plastic on your own machine to see how it looks. When you're happy, send the design to a Fab Bureau and have them print it in silver or gold, or have them print your coffee cup design in ceramic. The Fab Factory is a place where we can build open source products for people who don't have the time to make their own. And lastly, the Fab Bus will be our mobile classroom, Fab Lab and exhibition, helping to spread the word and the ideas. Let's now look at one personal fabrication technology that's riding ahead of the wave. The best known technology of this coming revolution is currently 3D printing, also known as additive manufacturing. Instead of starting with a block of material and, as Michelangelo said, liberating the shape inside, which is poetic but wasteful of material, we now add material little by little and build up the shape. There are 3D printers that can print an entire street of houses in one go, extruding concrete from a giant gantry. There are 3D printers that can print human organs. They print clothes and shoes. I was at a fashion show of 3D printed clothes in London recently. And they 3D print parts for aircraft jet engines, coffee cups, and precious metal jewellery. We can print knickknacks, product prototypes, engineering bits and pieces, and Christmas decorations. There are a number of different 3D printing technologies, but the most well-known is fused deposition modelling, or squirting molten plastic. And that's the technology most available for playing with at home. If you are watching this video at the Southampton Small Business Saturday, Rich of the Fab Boutique is here with demonstrations of personal 3D printing, and Totton College has two teams competing to see who can be the first to build a 3D printer and print something. Fab Boutique is hoping to set up a pop-up shop selling 3D printers in South Hampshire over Christmas and the New Year. And Totton College is on the brink of becoming the local, if not the national hub for 3D printing in secondary education, and hopefully the first educational institute in the UK to have a Fab Lab. So how does 3D printing work? In a nutshell, the process of printing something in a desktop machine is basically the same as printing a street of houses, an artificial kidney, or an aircraft jet engine nozzle. You use software on your computer to create the 3D design, the equivalent of Microsoft Word, but in the realm of 3D things rather than words on a piece of paper. 3D design software can cost thousands of pounds, but most of what we use is free and freely downloadable. And if you don't want to design something yourself, there are libraries of designs, most of them free, that you can download and print out. Check out thingiverse.com. As you can see, they're up to date with modern trends. Here are the designs for Movember moustache combs. Once you have your design, another piece of software slices the object into thin layers. These layers are sent to the printer one at a time. The printer prints a layer, moves up slightly, and prints the next layer. And that's it. There are other 3D printing technologies. Some have been around for a while and use lasers and powder. Those machines are highly accurate and highly expensive. We will have those in our Fab Bureau in the future. One small American company is working on a tiny 3D printer that uses laser and resin. It only produces small objects, but their target price for the printer coming to market is just $100. We will have those in Fab Boutique just as soon as we can. And I'm in discussion with a Californian manufacturer at the moment. I hope to get the UK manufacturing rights to a personal 3D printer kit which sells in the USA for under $300. Meanwhile, Fab Boutique is selling what is probably the most successful personal 3D printer in Europe, possibly the world, the Ultimaker, a machine that was conceived and born in a Fab Lab in Utrecht, Holland. You may think that this technology has no relevance to your business, but then 25 years ago, or even less, you probably thought that about PCs and smartphones. So, if you're a parent, householder, teacher, business owner, manufacturer, politician who would like to start a Fab Lab where you live and work, or help your local community become a Fab City, or just start using a personal fabricator, there is a contact form on the Fab Labs UK website for anyone who wishes to be kept up to date with what's happening, locally, nationally, or even internationally. If you use Facebook, please like and get notifications from our Facebook page. The video of this talk can be found on fablabsuk.co.uk/FabCity, where you will be able to follow any of the links I mentioned here. Thank you for watching.